It is a delight to be here this evening and to see this weird cross-section of both new friends and slices of my life from New Jersey and Durham and Glen Ellen. And don't look around, but my 5th grade teacher is here. I'm just saying. So I'm pretty excited. Thank you so much for having me here. When my daughter was 3 years old, she's fixing to go to preschool. And because my husband was a pastor for those years, people had given us a lot of clothes. And I had not had to shop for her in 3 years. But she's starting preschool, and I thought it'd be fun to get her something a little special. So sort of being the sophisticate that I am, I went to Kmart and am sort of like pawing through these racks of clothing. And really my own criteria is that it's not a t-shirt that says like Daddy's Little Devil or Sexy Beast. That's all I want in a t-shirt, to just not say those two things. And sure enough, I finally found one. It's a white shirt, turquoise sleeves, and it says Dancer. And I feel like I can get behind Dancer. There's a little cartoon dancer girl. I feel really good about it. So I go home and, oh, it's got glitter. It's got glitter. So I go home and she loves the shirt, and I am just as popular as I thought I would be in the household for being the bearer of the shirt. The next day, we're driving to preschool, and she's back here in her little car seat, and in the rearview mirror, I watch her, and what she's doing is she's rolling up her little shirt to show off her toddler Buddha belly. And so my first thought is, what have I done wrong? And where has she seen this thing about showing off her skin? So, is it the teenagers at the mall? Probably. Was it the teenage girls at our church? Maybe a few of them. And then I take out my car binoculars and I look again, and the dancer girl had this big head, right? But a teeny tiny little dancer body and these sort of microscopic little dancer abs, and sure enough, the little cartoon girl was exposing her belly. And at 3 years old, my daughter gets it that somehow there is, power influence in showing more of her body than is necessary. In this culture, we are stuck, and we need to be set free. This week, I had a chance to walk with a friend in Durham, North Carolina, who is a recent Wheaton grad. And she described a little bit of her first year for me. She lived in a suite with 2 other women. And so my understanding is that means maybe, bunks in one room and, board games in the other room, whatever you people do. And she said, like, a typical evening with these women, with her friends, would be, after a long day sort of unpacking everything, eventually the conversation would get to how many calories each of them had consumed during the day. Of course, not that they had had enough, but how many they had restricted, and what type of a workout they had had that day, right? A little competition about the workout. So it might be typical for a student to get to 9:30 or 10 at night, and then like the competition, the guilt of not having had the workout, to go out and run. In this culture, we are stuck, and we need to be set free. When I was a college student, I had a chance to work with an urban ministry in Camden, New Jersey called Urban Promise. And when I was there, in a room not unlike this, I was just a little sort of fly on the wall, and I got to listen to an urban youth pastor speaking to a room of teenagers, beautiful African-American girls. And he said to them, a lot of you are concerned that your skin is too dark, that your lips are too wide. He said, meanwhile, white women are getting skin cancer in tanning booths, and they're paying thousands of dollars to have collagen injected into their lips to make them look more full. We're stuck, and we need to be set free. This afternoon, I saw that a friend of mine had blogged. This woman is a committed Christian wife and mother. Excuse her language, but it fits. She says, I spend a lot of money on crap I don't need, And spending money on crap makes me way happier than it should. I get high from shopping. It might only be a sweater from a thrift store, but that sweater has me freaking thrilled. Spending money on nonsense brings me joy. However, and she's honest, giving the small amount of money I give to help a kid in India or as a tithe makes me not so thrilled. We're stuck and we need to be set free. The world has lied to us about the value and the purpose of our bodies. And the church has failed to announce good news in a way that's really transforming and in a way that it can set us free from this bind. I want to hear from you. What are some of the messages that you have heard in the church about appearance, beauty, body image? What have you heard in church, maybe from your families, but mostly in your faith community? Don't be shy. What are some of the messages? And it might not be spoken, but what are some of the subtle messages that we pick up on in our communities of faith about how we look? Oh, yeah. We're told that our bodies are a temple. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Yeah. Okay, so don't be a stumbling block. The implication being if you look too hot, you become a stumbling block for others. Yes? Yes. Okay. What else? Yeah. Thank you. So man looks on outward appearance, but God looks at our insides. Anything else? Yeah. Modest is hottest. All right, I grew up a few miles away in Glen Ellen, Illinois, and I was in my backyard working on a little dance routine for the junior high talent show, and my grandmother was visiting, and she came over, and I think that like my hair was a mess, and she asked me if I'd forgotten to brush my hair that day. I said, no, I never intended on brushing it, so it wasn't a forgetting situation, and it sort of turned into an expression of her general disappointment at my appearance, and she told me, God wants you to look your very best. And that did not sit right with me. And I had been going to Sunday school at the Methodist Church and then First Pres. And I told her, kind of what I've been getting is that God loves me the way that I am. And she said, no, he wants you to look your very best. And I said, that doesn't sound right. She said, it's in the Bible. And I said, really? And I hadn't read the whole thing, like at age 12, but I said, that does not sound one bit Jesus-y to me. Where is it? She said, I don't know where it is, but it's in there. Right? And so back and forth we go, and finally, just reluctantly, she concedes, God loves you, but he wants you to look your very best. So we get this message sometimes in more formal churches that we honor God with our appearance. During college, my friends and I took a road trip from Westmont up to Vancouver and back. And in San Francisco, we were at my friend's grandparents' house. And it was like a big night of Uno around the kitchen table. And her grandfather was giving me a hard time about my hair. I don't know what it is about these old people and my appearance. But he was really ribbing me. And finally, his wife says, oh, dear. She said, the Lord looks on the heart. And it's one of those things that old people say that's kind of supposed to make you feel better, but it really doesn't. Like, we know she's a mess on the outside, but God looks on the inside. And it didn't help me because if these insides are supposed to be beautiful, I've been in there, people, and it's not all pretty. So sometimes we're told that God doesn't care about the outsides, but God looks on the inside. And finally, I have heard, you're beautiful because God doesn't make junk. And I never thought God did make junk, but I'm not sure that makes me beautiful. And so, each one of these sort of has a grain of truth, but they have not yet transformed us to live differently. So if the church is going to say something relevant to this sort of cultural obsession about the perfection of our bodies, we've got to first identify the lies that we have believed and bought into, right? $80 billion annually on cosmetic products to improve our appearances. We've bought into these lies. We need to identify the lies and then begin to live something better. All right, the first lie that we've heard in our culture is that our bodies, the way that God has made them, are not good. I want to tell you a story about Listerine antiseptic. And Listerine was this antiseptic compound that was invented in the late 1800s. And so during the First World War, Listerine was used to clean soldiers' wounds. So it was like not the green minty kind, but sort of the brown medical kind of Listerine, and saves countless number of lives. Hooray for that. But then after the war, the makers of Listerine, Lambert Brothers, have to figure out how to market their product. So they kind of have this powwow of the company's executives, the advertising execs, and the chief chemist. Now, of course, they could go around like shooting people, right, to drum up some business. That would be bad. That would not help sales at all. So the chief chemist starts going through this list of the other uses of this antiseptic. And he gets to one, halitosis. And somehow that rings a bell, not that people know what halitosis is, because he had to explain to them it's like unpleasant breath odor. It's like they knew what it was if they'd ever been close to somebody else, but it wasn't this shameful situation for which you buy a product. And they said, bam, halitosis is it. This is the way their advertising campaign was going to go. And this is sort of a template. This is a template for what these ads look like splashed across all the women's magazines. And the formula is, kind of a picture of a woman in a perilous halitosis-related situation. And then, like the headline that grabs our attention. And then underneath, there's this little drama that happens, like a little soap opera story that we get drawn into. We find out how bad her life is. And this one, I know you can't read it, but it begins, no matter how charming you may be or how fond of you your friends are, you cannot expect them to put up with halitosis. And then in parentheses, unpleasant breath, right? Because we don't know what halitosis is. You cannot expect them to put up with halitosis forever. They may be nice to you, but it is an effort. And there weren't like one or two of these. They were everywhere. And of course, they're based on shame. This is my favorite because that fence says Jimmy's dad has halitosis. So like, you can see Jimmy is like set up for a life of crime because of the halitosis. Okay, and so here's some successful career girls, which is fantastic. But there's another one, and this woman, she just keeps going over and over her books, like, why am I failing? And it's the halitosis. Keeping her from success in business. I thought this guy might be a pastor, but he's a psychiatrist, right? So she's saying, I want gaiety, friends, love, and you shall have them, he promised her. Just the distress over being unacceptable. This is particularly sinister. This little girl playing, bride and groom got left at the church by her little boy groom. But it's reassuring because it says, no. It says, lucky little Edna to find out so soon what some people never learn at all. So, so that is a lucky girl. That is one lucky little girl. Okay, a darling goes to her doom. Look at her. I don't know if it's like, I think she might be homecoming queen. She thinks it's going to be the best night of her life, but she is off to her doom because of the halitosis. Okay, same thing. How could he treat her this way? So much of it is tied into relationships. Literally, you are unlovable with the bad breath. Let the tide take her out. I won't. even care if she dies. Okay, and then sort of appealing to a mother's sense, and her mother was to blame. That you could actually be instrumental in, destroying your child. So here we are in the 50s. This is like Bridge Club, and Nola goes off to get her friends some salty snacks, and they're talking about her behind her back. So they want you to know, if you don't think you have halitosis, you do. You just do, and you probably don't know it. Okay, here's a warning, people. I am sensitive. Like, I've not been able to watch, like, Schindler's List, Hotel Rwanda. If you're of a sensitive sort of put on some invisible armor right now, okay? These are all malicious. This one particularly so. Often a bridesmaid, but never a bride. So, although this one's from 1936, the first one was 1922. And this is where we got the phrase. It is from a Listerine advertisement. The insinuation being, right, you're not worthy of love and relationship with the halitosis. Completely sinister. This is an advertisement, 1923, and it is for a skin lightener targeted to African Americans, 1923. It's called Golden Brown Beauty Preparations. And it says, big title, Pride in Our Race demands that we look light, bright, and attractive. Pride in our race, right? Everything's upside down, because that is the opposite of pride. I don't know if you're like trying to do the math. That is the opposite of pride, demanding that we look light, bright, and attractive. And here's the thing about shame in advertising is that it sells. From 1921 to 1927, the sales of Listerine antiseptic didn't like double or triple or quadruple. Are you ready, business people? They 40-folded. I don't know what the word for that is, right? But $25,000 in sales up to $1 million in sales because shame sells. Tell me what some of these products are that are being marketed to us in our culture today, right? So the explicit text might not be as obvious today, but the message is clear that how we've been made is not quite right. What are some of the products today? Or body parts that we're trying to fix. What was that?
Every product.
Every product, right? Just kind of head to toe. What are we being sold? Thank you, teeth whiteners. And there's this whole thing that goes with the white, bright teeth, like yellow teeth, brown teeth. Like, you might not even be intelligent, right, if your teeth look like that. We've got to have the whitest, brightest teeth. What's another one? Acne medicine. Yeah, something else? Makeup, right. So our eyes are supposed to look, I don't know what, like bigger, brighter. Our lips are supposed to be full and lush. What else? Yeah. Wait, what are real men buying? Old Spice. Thank you. Oh, right. Gentlemen, just like that, please feel free to chime in at any time, gentlemen. Did you guys have one up here? Yeah. Hair straighteners or curlers, right? You really can't win. If your hair is curly, you need to make it straight, and if it's straight, it needs more body and curl. Yeah. Hair dye, right. Whatever your color is, it's wrong for you. Yeah. Age-removing makeup with these very clinical diagrams. I was looking at one of these this week of like the pores go in. It was like an Ellen DeGeneres one too. And it says like, no, I'm not a teenager. I just wear this age-defying makeup. Yeah, back here. Spanx. So people, I hope you don't know about these, but it's like a scuba suit that a woman wears under her garments if she's got to go to like a wedding or dance or something. Spanx, thank you. Yeah, anything else? Right here.
Axe excites, even angels will fall.
Okay, Axe excite, and is that a perfume scent?
It's deodorant.
Oh gosh, deodorant is causing angels to be so tempted that they fall out of the sky? Is that, okay. Okay, good to know. Yeah. Botox, yeah. Millions of dollars we're spending to shoot like paralyzing agents into our faces and bodies to not look wrinkly. We can't smile anymore, but we've got smooth something. Yeah, anything else? Shame sells. Once we're convinced that we're not really acceptable the way we are quick to spend our resources to do something that promises to at last make us acceptable. I would love to know what like 19, 20-year-olds are getting for their Facebook ad, like the sidebar ads, because mine keep changing every year. It's like, flabby at 40? I'm like, oh my gosh, how do they even know? Right? Like the next year, saggy at 41? Yes! Right, so I don't know. But here's the thing. Nobody is taking out ad space on Facebook to say, you don't need to look like anybody else because you're worth recognizing. Nobody is paying for ad space on Facebook to say, God made you good, so don't buy stuff you don't need. A Christian doctrine of creation rooted in Genesis 1, where God looks over creation and calls it good, says that you are created in the image of God and you are made good, right? We kind of have to separate out sin, because that's this whole other thing, from shame. Shame says there's something inherently wrong about who you are and how you are made. Okay. The second lie that we're being fed is that our bodies are made to be viewed and that they can and should be perfected. And I confess I am guilty of this. A woman in my church, she is a Wheaton grad. I had not seen her for a while. I must have been skipping women's Bible study. But I show up and she comes into the room, and I had always known her as somebody with like light, sort of highlighted light hair. And she comes in and her hair is a very dark brown. It's probably her natural color, but she comes in, and I just thought my first impulse was to be a little offended that she hadn't quite kept herself up for me, right? To come back after skipping a semester of women's Bible study. Right, this is crazy. We're convinced that people sort of owe it to us to look fantastic. I want to hear from you in terms of some of these body parts and what they're supposed to look like, what the image of this perfect woman is in our culture, this woman that we're striving to be. Her eyes, her skin, her features. What does she look like?
Victoria's Secret model.
Thank you. Victoria's Secret model. Just let your imagination go with that. Yeah, or not. Quick, now somebody say something else. What does this, yeah. She's tall. What else?
Thin.
She's thin.
Princess Diana.
She looks like Princess Diana. Any other features? Busty. Okay.
Smooth skin.
Very smooth skin. Mm-hmm. What was that?
Fit.
Fit. Mm-hmm.
But also curvy at the same time.
Right.
But also have hips and butt.
Right. So the places that are supposed to be perfectly flat are, but gently curvy in other places. Anything else about this perfect woman?
Young.
Mm-hmm. What would you guess? Early 20s? Or is even that pushing a little bit? Old lady in her 20s. Right, I think that is what we find in beauty pageants, Miss America. Like, you're kind of over the hill by then. Anything else about this perfect woman? What does she look like? Long hair. Okay. People, this is who you just described. Really, this is quite a fun party trick. Right? This little weird Mattel 10-inch mold that nobody fits into. And I won't go into all of the thing about, how she couldn't even stand up, really, if she was proportioned like this, which she couldn't. But here's what's criminal. It is not just sort of young, thin, lanky, Swedish-American girls who are trying to look like this. This is like our weird international export, because Latina women are dyeing their beautiful black hair blonde. Indian women are being convinced that they need to lighten their skin for happiness. Some of the commercials on TV now are just, they're heartbreaking, how this woman who's not even particularly dark-skinned, she loses her fiance, of course, to a lighter-skinned woman. In Japan, women are getting eye surgery to make they're getting their eyes sliced right here to make them look more round. And in China, women are having their legs surgically broken in leg lengthening surgeries. The church has a powerful message for the world. And that message is that God made your body good, right? Completely countercultural and revolutionary. I had a great conversation with a friend who is an African-American woman, and she was describing to me sort of how her mom got her ready for church on Sundays, and just sort of the time, money, and energy that went into straightening her hair. And she had no idea, but as she was talking, I was kind of drifting off in my own weird memory. And for me, it was a hot comb, like this yellow, like it felt sort of like a hammer or a mallet or something, and I'm tenderheaded, but my mom just pulling at my hair with this horrible hot comb. So, culturally it's going to look different, but the messages that we're receiving, not just from the culture, but also from our families, are that we're not quite right the way that God made us. We're not quite acceptable. If you have a chance to see Chris Rock's movie, Good Hair, please do. It's a great movie. All right. Okay. Jesus is teaching disciples, crowds, and in first century Palestine, the woman's body that was valued was not the body that was hot, it was the body that could reproduce. So a woman was valued for her ability to squeeze out children. Jesus is teaching, and a woman comes up who's kind of like a fan. And so I've seen video footage of Beatles concerts from the 60s where women just like scream so hard that they pass out, and I kind of imagine this woman being like that, right? She's totally psyched, so she wants to say the nicest thing that she can say to Jesus, and what she comes up with is, "Blessed is the mother who gave you birth and nurtured you." That's like the nicest thing you could say to somebody, apparently, in first century ancient Near East. And actually, the King James Version says, "Blessed is the womb that bore thee, and the paps which thou hast sucked." Right? So that's what I want to yell out at my son's soccer game on Saturday. Go, boys! Woo-woo! Okay. But here's the thing. Jesus was no more interested in endorsing his culture's values. And I'll say that is a pretty good thing, right? Squeezing out a child and feeding it with milk from your body. It's not a bad thing, but he still wasn't willing to endorse his culture's valuing of bodies over a kingdom sort of valuing. So if somebody yelled out something really nice like that to me, and I was speaking, I think I might just say thank you and sort of move on. But he didn't even say thank you. He's like, as a matter of fact, blessed rather are those who hear the word of God and obey it. He's saying your body's not blessed when all your feminine parts work just right, or, heaven forbid, your body's not blessed because you're hot, but rather those who are blessed, bodies that are blessed, are those who hear the word of God and obey it. Friends, knowing that God thinks we're beautiful has not yet set us free. And right here, I think there is real traction for us to begin to live differently. So a Christian doctrine of, I don't know if you call it like identity, mission, anthropology, defining what you were made for, says you weren't made to be viewed, but rather your body has a purpose. You're an agent of the kingdom that Jesus ushered in. And when somebody asked Jesus, like, really, if you could just boil it down for us, that would be fantastic. He said, love God and love people. That's what we do with our bodies. If you look at the 10 Commandments, most of those things are like, this is who you do and do not kneel to. You're not supposed to do this with your tongue. You're not supposed to do this with your hands. Our response to God is a bodily response, and that's where we find freedom. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity describes the humble man. And I know humility is not real prized in our culture, but I think you could also say not just the humble man, but a spiritually mature person. And Lewis says, if you think of a humble man, don't think of like a greasy, schmarmy sort of fellow. And as soon as he says it, that's all I can think of, right? Just this greasy person. He says, that's not it. He says, rather, if you met a humble man, probably all that you would notice, after you left, is that he seemed genuinely interested in what you said to him. So this humble person, this spiritually mature person, isn't kind of turned in on themselves, but they're able to look up and out at others, right? To use their eyes to see others and their ears to hear others. I just think a beautiful description of what bodies are for. So God didn't design you to be a person who's envied by others, admired by others, sort of a titillating sight for others. But God created you, your body is instrumental so that you could be for others. And the third lie our culture is feeding us says that some bodies matter more than others. When I had that chance to go to Camden, New Jersey, when I was in college, it was at a time when I think Camden had just been rated by some national news source as the most dangerous city in the country. So, of course, I said I grew up in Glen Ellen, right? So my family's a little nervous for me going to this place, and there's sort of a palpable anxiety about my safety. And as a college student, it just sort of occurred to me, like, my family has never really cared about the people who are already living in the most dangerous city in America. And so I felt like the message I got was that somehow my body was a little more important than the bodies of the folks who are already living there. I mean, it could have just been like, as a white girl from Glen Ellen, I would have no survival skills. I'm willing to admit that. But that somehow my body was more important than these other bodies. A few years ago, my husband was watching the mini-series John Adams. And so I was trying to distract myself with crafts and other things, but I'd go by and like somebody would be getting an amputation on the battlefield, or like I'd walk by again and there would be like a pussy postural situation. It was bad news. I didn't want to be a part of this mini-series. But at one point I walked by and I just peeked. I couldn't help, but I just kept peeking. And John Adams and his wife had just arrived in Washington. They're from Massachusetts, had just arrived in Washington. And as they look out over this city that represents their greatest hopes, dreams, aspirations, what they see is that every building and monument is being constructed by slaves. That's right, they don't have to say a word, but they're realizing this isn't the way that it's supposed to be. That some bodies matter more than others. And more recently, I don't know if you've seen The Help, but I saw The Help with my mother and my daughter, and maybe because I am a white woman, I left the theater thinking, that is an important story for us all to know, and feeling a little warm and fuzzy inside that the story had been told. But there's a professor at Duke named J. Cameron Carter, and he saw that whole thing differently. And he saw it as just another narrative that says the bodies of some people matter more than others. And in this case, right, the flesh of these black women is used to advance the career of a young white woman who is a writer. So she goes off to prosperity in New York City, and they remain in the same situation. So the lie that we have unwittingly swallowed whole and even perpetrate are that some bodies are worth more than others. A Christian doctrine of God's mercy and justice says that all bodies matter to God. Bodies that are enslaved in Egypt matter to God. On the other side of being released out of slavery, God gives the law in Deuteronomy and says, the bodies of aliens matter to me, and the bodies of widows and orphans matter to me. The bodies of slaves matter to me, and this is your job, right, to make sure those bodies are taken care of. God commands his people to participate in the protection of and provision for these bodies. So I think for a lot of us, as a people of privilege, we could probably continue to limp along, sort of squinting our eyes at injustice, continuing to overconsume, but we share God's heart for those in need when we take what we need and then steward the rest of what God's given us for kingdom purposes. So the world is telling us three things about bodies. The world is saying your body is not good enough. It's saying that your body is made to be viewed, your body is ornamental, and the world is telling us that some bodies matter more than others. A Christian theology, and I like the word robust, so I'm just going to say a robust Christian theology of the body says that the body is good, the body is instrumental, and that all bodies matter to God. All right, I would love now to begin pasting together sort of a collage of what this looks like on the ground. First, this thing that the body is good. I was walking in my neighborhood in Durham, North Carolina, and my neighbor, she's a ethics professor at Duke. She calls out to me and she says, Margot, I was just thinking about you. And so I felt great about that. And she continues on to say, I have company coming this weekend, and I was scrambling around cleaning up my house, and then I thought, what would Margot do? And as soon as she says, what would Margot do, I can kind of see like bracelets and t-shirts, WWMD, right? Oh, it all comes to me. What would Margot do? And then all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I think I know. What she's saying is, if Margot had company coming to her home, would she, sort of run around to clean up? No, that lazy Margot would let them walk right in on the chaos that her family lives with every day. So immediately I felt sort of less fantastic about that. But that's what we do, right? When we, somebody unexpected at our door, oh, I'm so sorry about this mess, and oh, don't even look in this room. But we do the same thing with our bodies when we go on and on, like, oh, bad hair day, or oh, sorry about this muffin top, or oh, once a month I get all oily, right? Nobody cares. But what we communicate to others when we do that is very powerful, because we communicate not only what we value about ourselves, but also what we value about them. One of the things I tried to do with my daughter when she was little, I think we maybe started when she was 3 or 4, just in bed one night, I said, sweetie, if I could change like one thing about you, what do you think it would be? And so it was horrible, right? Because she started guessing. She's like, oh, eyes, hair, and I'm not a good prankster at all, right? So I couldn't live with the tension. I'm like, no, nothing. There's nothing I would change about you. So she gets this relieved little grin. And so a week later, I tried again. Babe, if there was one thing, and again, she started like listing stuff. I'm like, no. There's nothing I would change about you. So she's a quick study, and she caught on. And then pretty quickly, I'd say, if there was, and she'd get a big smile, and she'd say, nothing. There's nothing that you would change about who I am. It's what I want to sink down into her deepest places. You bless others when you behave as if your body is good and their body is good, right? You may never look in the mirror and feel delighted with every inch of yourself, but this is a great place for fake it till you make it, right? This is where you want to do that, because if you just zip it and stop with the comments about yourself and others, that's what transforms other people, because what you communicate is that you are acceptable and they are acceptable. It is very easy, people. Just zip it up. All right. We need to live into the reality that God made our bodies to be instrumental. And that's kind of, I think, what C.S. Lewis is getting at, this body that sees others, hears others. Really, I hope this is not a newsflash, but that's what this is about, right? It's not for other people to view, it's for us to be present and in relationship with others. I have a, wait, do I have DeCarlo? I might. This is my friend DiCarlo, and he's in special ed classes at his high school, and we know each other through Reality Ministries in Durham. DiCarlo and I are going to the mall, and we're driving along. He's sitting next to me. We're at a red light, and he's right here kind of like waving at the person next to us and kind of smiling and waving. And like, you don't know what other people are going to think about that if they want somebody up in their business. And DiCarlo, he gets really excited and he says to me, he says, "Do you know them?" And I'm like, hundreds of thousands of people. No, I do not know them. And so he continues to sort of smile and make contact. And he's just about to roll the window down when light turns green. I floor it, we're gone, right? Because it was making me very uncomfortable, his friendliness. We get to the mall. We get to the Sears parking lot, and he sees a family coming out of Sears, and he says, "Hey, how you guys doing today?" And they respond, "We're good. How are you doing?" And I do not know if maybe he has known these folks for like a decade, or maybe he's just seen them for the first time. It's just such a very thin line. I can't be sure. And I say, "DiCarlo, do you know them?" And he says, "No, do you?" Nope. I still do not know these people. Right, we're at the gadget store in the mall, and a man walks in. DiCarlo runs up, embraces him, and I'm just like, "Please let him know this man," so that no charges will be pressed. And sure enough, it had been a teacher of his, and they knew each other, which is great. On the way home, about 3 blocks from my house is a little bit of a drug corner, and DiCarlo says, he's like, "Slow down, stop." And because I feel like I'm surrounded by sort of a force field of joy, I stop. And sure enough, a woman at the corner says, "Hey, DiCarlo, how you doing?" He's like, "Good girl, how you doing?" And I'll tell you, DiCarlo knows exactly what faces and bodies are for, because anybody who's with him feels like they're the most important person in the universe, and really, I think that's what we all want. He uses his face and body to be for others and to bless others. He gets it. He knows what bodies are for. We need to live into the reality that all bodies matter to God. And I think a lot of this has to do with how we use our resources. So I've been doing this thing with my daughter, right? If there was one thing I could change, there she is, right? You got to love that face. And nothing to be changed, clearly. And so we've been doing this thing for a while, and I feel like it's really gotten into her marrow. And maybe like I'm the best parent that ever lived, okay? But we go to the beach in the summer, and like I'm certainly not one to do anything fancy with my hair, but I found myself a bottle of Sun-In and poured it on my head, and I come back from the beach really looking kind of blondie fantastic. And I'm not going to lie, I got some nice compliments from the gentleman at church on the blonde hair. But I don't make a big deal of it. I just know how great I look. And we're at the hair place where people get their hair cut, and my daughter's looking into the mirror, and I switch it up. I say, "Babe, if there was like one thing that you could change about you, what would it be?" And without missing a beat, she says, "I would make my hair yellow or black." And in that moment, it became clear to me, again, I'm not like an anti-dyist or anti-lightener, but in that moment it becomes clear that when I was perfectly okay with the way that I was, she was as well. But when I sort of felt the need to look a little better than I really do, she picked up on that as well. I had shared this story at a women's retreat, and not only that thing about the dissatisfaction, but also these resources that we pour into improving this mess are meant for other things, people. These are kingdom resources that we are using to sort of quell our own anxieties and insecurities. So I had said something to this effect, and after the retreat, like one of the organizers is over here, she's wrapping up the sound cords, the power cords, and she was fired up. She said, "When I get home, I am marching straight to my hairdresser, and I am breaking up with her." And I said, "Whoa, it's a pretty tall order." And she went on to explain to me that she had just spent like $150 on highlights for her hair. And I did not have the heart to tell her that the highlights were not visible to the naked eye. You couldn't see them. But something had clicked for her that the resources she was pouring into her appearance could be used for other things. A lot of us, other things. Nope. Oh, there's me blonde, but that's a wig. Okay. Sorry. Okay, right? We pour our money into stuff that we don't really need when those resources could be going other places. And a lot of us, every single week, we pray the Lord's Prayer, and we thank God for meeting our needs, for giving us our daily bread. And daily bread is just sort of code for enough. I think God delights in giving us enough, but we've gotten into this habit where we take so much more than we need. All right. What I would love for you to hear is that you can create a new culture in the church, a new culture on this campus, where bodies are valued and are agents in the building of the kingdom that Jesus ushered in. We do that as we practice acceptance of ourselves and others, even if we have to fake it. We do it as we use our bodies to be for others. My husband is a big worker-outer. He does look fantastic. But every once in a while, I have to remind him, if there's a family that needs moving, I remind him, I say, that's why you work out. Or if there's a big, heavy child in my van who needs to get up the stairs at like 2 in the morning, that's why you work out. Our bodies are made to be for others, and our resources are made to be for others. I am so convinced that this is where the freedom is. And as we make these small choices to change our habits, to practice new patterns of living in these bodies, that we are set free. I think I get a little more excited about this than I probably should. And I was teaching a Sunday school class at my church and did this sort of thing, right? Like, here's about 700 things that you could be doing differently. And it was just exhausting. I wouldn't have wanted to be in my class. And so afterwards, everybody just runs out as quickly as they can. And one woman, who hadn't said anything the whole class, comes up and just so humble. And she said, I find that I can't do everything, but I can do the next thing. Right? So she has her eyes open and her ears open for whatever God will present to her as the next thing, right? So the next thing could be fasting from like $1.69 Quickie Mart Gatorades. That is my weakness. It could be breaking up with the hairdresser. So many possibilities, but God doesn't call us to do everything. God does call us to do the next thing. So that's my prayer for y'all, is that you will be paying attention to whatever that next thing might be for you. I would love to open it up now for you to either say, now that was right on, or you are so wrong about that, Margot, or ask some questions if you've got something that you have been noodling on that we can have a discussion. Anything that you want to comment about? Oh, yes.
What is your view on like the culture of art and how it plays a role?
So I kind of want you to say something about that. The question was, what is your view of the culture of art? Will you say something about that? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, tell us.
Well, I'm in an art history class right now, and we are talking about the ideal body of the Greeks and how they have been trying to pursue what the body should actually look like. And I was talking to a professor last semester about this exact thing, and this question came up.
So in art, sort of that Greek perfect body.
And she had said that like our issues with body image have started like as far back as the Greek culture and the Hellenized world, because we have always been trying to pursue something that we don't have. So I just was wondering if you knew if there are any ideas on that.
Ooh. Okay, so with these perfected bodies, not just that we see on MTV, but that we see in, Greek art, that perfect form that they had worked so hard to achieve. How does that impact us today? Or
yeah, like what, or at least like what's your stance on art, like on photography and painting as well?
yeah, so art major right here. I guess I would love to see artists be creative about producing things that that help us break free of that mold, and even giving us representations, images of something that is beauty that's sort of outside of the box of the beauty that we're already conditioned to see. I think there's a lot of room for artists to be a part of the solution and not just keep us in that same box. Yeah, that's a great question. Yes?
Piggyback on that, and of all the people who flock and with David, there's a reason that they're doing that. Because that is, a lot of people, we find that as a picture of beauty.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so she's saying people are flocking to these images, Michelangelo's David, because we see that as an image of beauty. And then the question is, oh, no, I do not. But I will admit that this is sort of my growing edge. Because when I was thinking about these things, I wanted to say, beauty schmuty, totally is stupid, and appearances don't even matter. And a friend of mine said, well, that's kind of interesting, Margot, because the time it takes you to go to the thrift stores and find the white denim jackets and then dye them purple and then sort of lighten them up a little bit, that's a lot of energy that I've put into my weird sort of form of beauty. And that really caused me to wrestle with it, right? Because her point was her husband once a year goes to Brooks Brothers, puts down his credit card, gets his 3 suits, and he's done with it. So maybe his is more expensive, but I put all this weird time and energy into it. And for me, I feel like the barometer has been those 3 things: time, money, energy, because, right, we have to affirm that God created beauty. God delights in beauty. God invites us to delight in beauty. But I think if we can just sort of pay attention, it's going to look different in each of our lives, but the time, money, and energy that we're pouring into particularly our own appearances, that can kind of be a barometer, I think, for where we get off track. But yes, I do want to affirm that God is the author of beauty. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between, so the question is how can men participate in being a part of the solution, but what's the difference between close friends and not close friends?
With your close friends bringing up how they present themselves and bringing up what you see in them would be a more comfortable conversation than with acquaintance or with someone you're not really close with.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying you can have these deeper conversations with friends about who they are that's more than just the packaging? Yeah. Sort of, okay. But hooray, right? This isn't like women's problems to be solved, but we need men to partner in this with us. And I would say number 1 rule of thumb is to not describe any woman as being hot. Just listen to the language that you use. All of a sudden, this woman, although she may be very attractive, is no longer a sort of a full human being, but she's been objectified. And I hope that doesn't sound like I'm lecturing about, oh, don't use that language, but it matters. It matters for your head, the way you view women. So there could be no women around, but notice how you speak about women when you're just with your friends, and absolutely in your relationships with women. yeah, have those conversations affirming the wholeness of who they are, because we are so used to being judged only for this, and I love it that you're thinking a little further to affirm the rest of who a woman is. Yeah, so important. Yeah.
Kind of touched on the topic that shame sells, but could you cast light on how sex sells, the relation between that and shame, and what that reflects as far as our cultural ideals go?
Gosh, right. So we know that shame sells, but we also know that sex sells. Yeah, just happen to have a little something. So this one, it's a 2-page spread, but I think you get the idea. So right, here's the legs, here's the rest of the body. Nice booty, great sole, very funny, the sole of a shoe, because we're selling Reeboks here, right? With this sexy image. Beauty attracts the eye. Men and women are going to be attracted to this image of an attractive woman. And we're selling, in this shoe, what we're selling to women is this is who you can become. You can be desirable. You can attract the attention of others. So it really is all wrapped up in there. And you'd say to yourself, like, why are we even using sex to sell cream of wheat or something? But it's because it works. It gets our attention. It communicates, power, attractiveness, desirability, relationship even. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon because it does work. Yeah.
What does it look like for the church to dispel the discriminant and homogenous qualities of Western conceptions of beauty?
Can you explain to us what that looks like when the church promotes these sort of homogenous conceptions of Western beauty? What does that look like in the church?
I think it's just a lack of diversity in the composition of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
And so where do you see it? Like, do you see it in Christian conferences? Do you see it at the pulpit? Where are you recognizing that?
There's conversations about marriage, depictions of marriage, couples, things of that nature. There really isn't much, I think, cultural sensitivity to, I think, the general makeup of the United States, and also like interracial relationships too. Like, it's not.
Yeah. Right. So we can say that we believe in one thing, and we were having a conversation, one of our Sunday school classes, talking about what it would look like if my mostly white church could look not so white anymore, right? That would be fantastic. And so a lot of people can fool ourselves and say, oh my gosh, like, if a black person walked into our horribly white church, I would welcome them and really think that we've done something big with that. And this old man, he'd spent 50 years in the mission field. This old man raises his hand, and I just think, oh no, I do not know where this is going to go. And he says, if we're serious about it, we'll call a black pastor, right? If we really want something to be different, we'll reflect that in our leadership, and we won't just kind of sit around hoping for things to be different. And I think there probably are congregations who are being more active about that, but I think you're right that that a lot of churches have a long way to go with that. Yeah.
So piggybacking on the language of shame and the modest is hottest idea, I've been thinking a lot about Christian school dress codes.
Christian school dress codes.
I don't go to Wheaton, so I don't know if there's dress code here or not, but in a lot of schools, both high schools and college, there are strict dress codes that are more strict for women. And in addition to that, it's measured. Lots of times these dress codes are measured in public. So girls have to stand in front of a group of people and hold their arms down and measure and see if their hemline is long enough or their neckline is high enough. And I think the message there is saying that a woman's body is a distraction in the educational realm. And in a sense, saying that the woman's body is not welcome or that the woman's body is inappropriate and it somehow alienates women in a lot of ways. But I guess the thing I've been wrestling with is how do we talk about modesty in a way that is not shame-inducing for women? Like, can we have that conversation in a way that is not hinging on women? Your bodies, all they are is a distraction. Instead of finding a way to talk about modesty in a
So, what some of these dress codes communicate are, I suppose there's some male counterpart, right? But women's clothes have to be longer than this. The straps have to be 3 inches this. And what's communicated is there is something shameful about your body. We need to sort of cover it up and get rid of it a little bit. So do you have ideas about how that conversation can be filled out in a more helpful way? And you're next to people with opinions too. Anybody. Seriously, do you have an idea about that?
I'm not sure if I do. It's hard because I desire to honor men. I want to honor men, and I don't want to put all the burden on men. So maybe, I don't know if my husband will respond to this at all, but I do think that there is an unfair burden without belittling the struggles that men have. I feel like there's an unfair burden placed on women that is profoundly cultural, and I don't think it's godly. So I think the entire conversation needs to be structured, at the very least, to not attack women, especially at an administrative level, to grab women and say, you need to cover up. If you're dressed inappropriately, you need to wear this ugly sweater today to cover your body. That is not.
So it's insulting women, but also terribly insulting to men if we say you really are an animal, like you can't be around these beautiful bodies. So we need to give both a little more credit in this discussion and not reduce it to what's easiest.
Layer to which, we need to be talking to women about, how are you using your body? Just like you said about using it for people. Maybe not using the language of you're a distraction, but more, how are you serving the kingdom of God with how you use your body? That might be a more positive way to approach it, but I think we're doing it wrong.
I kind of want to put you in charge of a Christian high school right now. But does anybody else have thoughts on how this could be done differently, right? Because there's some validity, but how could we be doing it better? Yeah.
I actually heard a speaker talk about exactly this, and the conclusion we kind of came to was it really is your heart and the recipient's heart in the entire matter. If a man has a heart where he doesn't just view women as sexual beings, as just bodies, then it doesn't matter if he sees a naked woman, there will be no temptation. If his heart is really in that place. And if a woman is walking around with skanky clothes because she wants to be viewed that way, then that's her heart, It's not just the outside's her heart. But if she walks around maybe with a tank top and shorts, but isn't doing so in I'm trying to be sexy kind of thing, I don't think that's wrong at all, In heaven, we never know. We might be walking around completely naked.
In heaven, we might be walking around completely naked, is what she was just saying.
Why not, Adam and Eve were totally naked until the devil brought shame. That's the truth.
Okay. So this thing is a matter of the heart. And, what I heard from you, we need to be looking at women's hearts and also nurturing and forming men's hearts at the same time as we try to work through this. Maybe one more. Does anybody have one more thing that you're burning to say or objection that you'd like to make? Yeah.
So I think one of the things that makes this difficult for men and for women is we say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to not worry about this so much, the way I look, the way I appear. And yet there's this whole idea of I need to be healthy. I need to take care of my body. And so we sort of deceive ourselves into thinking we're taking care of our bodies and being healthy, but really we're just falling back into, the way I look because that's a way of gauging how healthy I am. So do you have any advice on how to live in that tension between being healthy and yet not falling into that?
Yeah, that's a great one, right? We so easily deceive ourselves right, I'm working out every single day to be healthy. And if we really took a look at our hearts, we want to look hot, right? If we're honest about this thing. I think one of the ways that we can break that might even be in the ways that we work out. I don't think it has to be on a treadmill looking at People magazine, but we can Like walk a mile to get a gallon of milk and maybe add one for our neighbor and walk back. Or, and this sounds kind of ridiculous, or if we care about the environment, on our 5-mile walk, like be doing squats and picking up trash at the same time. But I think that we purposefully, it's not enough to just know it in our heads. I think we purposefully have to be making new choices with our bodies, and maybe the way that we do our workouts could be one expression of that. Yeah, that's a great question. All right. Thank y'all for coming this evening.